Hey, what's up, boys? So how the fuck do I get charismatic? These pointers are mainly taken from the book The Charisma Myth. We're gonna explore the different types of charisma and then followed by some tips and tricks on how we can go ahead and develop that level of charisma. Everybody talks about it, everybody wants it. How can I increase my aura points by 5,000 when I walk into a room? What gives me that presence? What makes people admire me and think I'm so sexy? What makes men want to fall on their knees and suck my cock and question their sexuality? So let's get into it. From the book, we have 4 different categories of charisma. We have authority charisma, which is exuding confidence and status. This is the commanding leadership kind of charisma. Someone with authority charisma is someone who is very high in power and status, but not necessarily approachable. The second category is focus charisma, when you focus your attention on one person to make them feel like $1 million. You want them to be at the center of attention and have them feel valued. Someone with focus charisma is someone with a lot of presence who makes people feel important and heard. The third category, kindness charisma, is someone who projects warmth and makes people feel welcome and appreciated. Someone who creates a deep, warm, emotional connection with others. And lastly, we have visionary charisma, which is someone with the ability to inspire others, craft compelling stories to communicate your message, kinda like Hitler. And why do we look for charisma, right? Maybe we come from a place of immense social scarcity and we think that our charisma is the problem, which it definitely could be. Maybe we are already at a decent level, but we want to expand outward even more and get even better opportunities and have the liberty to molest a bunch of women with consent. Maybe we hold on to a sense of covert narcissism where we want to be more admired and get the love that we deserve, be at the center of attention at all times, and everybody looks at us when we enter a room, so that we can play into the game of self-importance while following social norms. Because charisma is like a positive thing, right? Having it would fulfill your narcissistic desires without, people pointing out that you are indeed narcissistic. Now let's look at how we can actually develop our charisma. Let's look at non-verbal communication, our body language and mannerisms. These 2 aspects are almost impossible to fake. If the internal mental state is different from what we want to emit, at some point, some micro-expressions will surface. Therefore, the internal mental state is critical. So your mental health, what you tell yourself, your belief system, your self-worth, your self-esteem, this will all shine through. How do you think about yourself? Do you hate yourself? How much experience do you have in social confrontation and situations? Are you comfortable in your own skin? And these things can only be developed through experience, if I'm being honest, combined with a lot of self-evaluation and challenging your deep-rooted unconscious thoughts. Now, I'm sure we all already know this, but you can deal with this by journaling. If you don't know how, that means you don't want to do it because you're too lazy. All you need is a piece of paper and a pen. You look at a situation that you keep rethinking how you can do better in, and then you evaluate your thought patterns, What were your bad habits? Why did you do this and that? Now, you look within yourself, some spiritual experience type beat. Here are some obstacles to your charismatic mental states. If you have mental or physical discomfort, it will affect how others perceive you. If you are uncomfortable in your clothes, the discomfort will become obvious, but not necessarily the reason for the discomfort. When your discomfort becomes obvious, they wouldn't know the exact reason for it. You'll just seem uncomfortable and then you'll seem untrustworthy. Others might think that you are not enjoying their company. So when we do have some sort of discomfort, mentally or physically, we can try to remove or limit it beforehand. If we're wearing uncomfortable clothes, don't wear it in the first place, or sound it off to the person, voice it out. In the middle of conversation, you can go like, dude, I swear this shit is fucking irritating. It's itchy as fuck. I'm sorry if I keep fidgeting. Just voice it out. And if you feel a discomfort arising, in the middle of conversation, act to alleviate it. Don't just ignore it. Mental discomfort negativity, self-doubt, anxiety. These feelings are all unavoidable. The challenge is how we react to this discomfort. We must try to destigmatize, which means to remove the shame or disgrace associated with a person, quality, or circumstance. Don't be paranoid of discomfort and how that will reflect on you. Everyone feels discomfort, right? In the moment, we gotta sort it out, voice it out. It's unavoidable, and we have to just accept it. Don't focus on one discomfort and then just dig yourself a hole, give yourself a problem that wasn't even there in the first place. Sometimes we gotta rewrite reality positively to the best of our ability, shift our perspective in the moment, and just focus on what's positive, focus on the most positive outcome that could come from that discomfort. Visualize that the person would receive you well. Visualize that they will be reciprocative. You'll do fine. And even if you don't think of the best situation that happens when you don't do fine, physically you can try to take an open posture. Your mind wants to be consistent with your body, so pull your shoulders back, stick your chest out, try to take up more space, stick your chin up if you want. It might feel unnatural, but give it a shot and see if you feel more confident when you do that. Let's look at first impressions. People judge our economic level, education, level of success within a few seconds of meeting someone, before even talking to one another. Clothing is essential. The best clothing depends on the environment. Look at the range of choices within that environment and choose the upper end if you can, to the best of your ability. When you're speaking to someone, keep the spotlight on the other person as long as possible. People in general love to talk about themselves. Ask open-ended questions. Be curious about them. But this isn't an absolute, If somebody asks you a question, you don't start thinking to yourself, oh, the person who talks more is in less power, therefore I must talk as less as possible. And then they ask you about certain details about your life and what you're interested in, and you give one-word answers. How is that charismatic at all? We don't have to be calculative about who's speaking more, who's more influential, who's asking the most questions. None of that. I don't think that is a valid consideration. Especially when you're in the middle of a conversation, it's probably a terrible idea to keep pondering over whether you're speaking too much or whether you're oversharing, or maybe the other one asking more questions than you and they're having power over the conversation and being the one controlling the pace and steering the conversation. Like, you don't have to think about all of that, These are just general guidelines, not absolutes. You want to be in the conversation. You want to actually connect with this person. You want to obsess over appearing as charismatic as possible and calculatively following all these general guidelines, because it will make you seem untrustworthy. These guidelines are to help you catch yourself if you are struggling with charisma, if you're incredibly anxious. Focusing on what to do next and being a little bit calculative can shift your focus away from your anxiousness and your fears into these general guidelines, which would definitely do you better, because at least you can trust it and just rest easy in it, and you don't have to be paralyzed with what to do next. People will be left with whatever emotions your conversation generates. Ask questions that would generate positive emotions, not negative ones. Try to end your conversations in at least a hopeful and inspiring light. Again, this is a generalization. There's always time for more serious emotional conversations, and there's always time for more positive ones. But ideally, we want to be considerate about how our conversations make the other person feel. So for the most part, especially when we're meeting strangers, it is generally a good guideline to try to generate positive emotions, try to bring the conversation to end wonderfully in a positive note. But of course, again, you don't have to be too calculative about this. What matters is you actually speak to the person, actually try to get to know them, connect with someone, and feel fulfilled for having that conversation. Education about social skills always seems autistic to people who are generally familiar with social dynamics. But for us who lack experience, to people who are unfamiliar, I strongly believe that with social skills education, we can alleviate our anxiousness. That's why it can be important for those inexperienced and those who need help and those who are struggling and confused about how they can level up their social game. We follow these general guidelines, which may seem very strange at first, very awkward, but eventually these general guidelines become integrated with ourselves and how we speak to people. We pick up what we like about these guidelines and then we use it for the future, and eventually we become so comfortable using them that it just becomes a part of us. Then it won't feel unnatural anymore. And these general guidelines that we pick up from books or watching videos, they give us more courage to expose ourselves to even more experiences, try to push ourselves and challenge our fears, because they relieve some capacity in social confrontation. Let's look at speaking and listening. Listening is crucial. Listen actively. Do not just wait for your turn to speak. I find that many of us like to just sit there in conversation, and because we're so calculative, we're just focused on what they're going to say next, what are you going to say next? And then I'm going to respond accordingly because I'm playing a chess game. When someone finishes talking, you do not have to respond immediately. You do not have to fill in that gap of silence as soon as you can. You do not have to add a or ah, and then you just start making strange noises trying to fill up the silence. Most of us do it, and it's kind of weird if we really think about it. And we don't like that we do it because we know that we are trying to fill up the empty space. We don't want it to be too silent because that feels way too uncomfortable. We have to get comfortable in that. Trying to fill up those silences feels very inauthentic, and we could say some random sentence that leads the conversation down to a boring path if we're just urgently trying to fill up that silence. So we can pause for a while. The silence doesn't mean fuck all if we look at the conversation as a whole. We can take a few seconds to absorb what the other person just said. Let your facial expression show that you are reacting to what he just said. Be comfortable in the silence. It's not that bad. It's only like a few seconds tops. And nobody actually gives a shit when the conversation ends that there was a silence in between. Unless it's fucking long, but even if it is fucking long, it's still funny, you can laugh it off. The main gist is be comfortable with the silence. Don't fill it up urgently because it really doesn't matter that much. When you take a compliment, don't downplay it and say like, no problem, it was nothing. Unless you're saying it with satire and sarcastically, because that's funny, alright? The other person will feel foolish and associate that foolish feeling with you. Instead, especially if they're a stranger, you can absorb, show your appreciation with a facial expression and thank them verbally. Just sincerely thank them. You don't have to autistically try to react to compliments in some very self-aware way or something like that. Just a quick thank you, Just appreciate and done. Don't be retarded. Right. And if you genuinely don't feel appreciative, you can pass it by through honest and earnest connection. You can go like, stop glazing me, bro, and laugh it off. Or, are you flirting with me, and laugh it off. You don't have to lie that you are so appreciative and grateful for it. Oh my god, thank you, man. Thank you, man. When speaking for vocal power, use a slow and measured tempo. Insert pauses between sentences and drop the intonation of voice at the end. So when you're speaking to someone, you don't want to speak like me, where I just randomly start picking up the pace when I feel like it. And then after that, slowly I slow down and I start explaining something in a slow pace because that sounds cool. Another note from Mark Manson's book, Models, which is an amazing read for social skills and dating stuff. You don't want to portray neediness. Neediness is something people generally despise, but they don't really have a word for it. Mark Manson calls it neediness, and I think it's a perfect way to coin this whole kind of behavior people have. Neediness is something you will struggle to hide, whether it's your desire for validation, admiration, praise, attention, care, etc. Other people can smell it. Even with these tips on improving your charisma, if you're desperately trying to optimize your behavior for more attention, you will come off as needy. These are simply nice guidelines you can rely on when you get anxious and start to act on your bad habits. This next tip, I think most of us already know. It's like a very common scientific thing. But imitating your co-speaker's body language is an easy way to establish unconscious rapport. Mirror the way they hold their head, how they place their feet and shift their weight. When we mirror somebody's mannerisms in evolutionary science, the chameleon effect, where we become more and more similar to the people we spend time with, it makes them feel more comfortable around us because we just feel like them. So when somebody moves their hand gestures in a certain way, in a certain rhythm, we can try to pick up on that just to feel more comfortable around them, and then they will feel more comfortable around us. Next, we got eye contact. Eye contact is kind of an important thing, but at the same time, a lot of people talk about it like it's this a calculative thing that you have to make sure you win the eye contact battle. You have to stare at them and you can't look away. You have to let them look away first, because if you look away first, you have lost the game. You have proved yourself to be an inferior man. So you just have to stare at women like this. And that's how they fall for you, because you have to keep eye contact. It's just that important. Oh fuck, I just looked away. Oh. But eye contact isn't really that wonderful of a thing, and it can seem quite confrontational for other people. However, it is important, because sometimes eye contact is very important to show sincerity, to show connection. There's no more badass feeling than having eye contact with a girl walking past and you wink at her, or you wave at her and you smile at her and she smiles back. But of course, because I'm such a wimp, after I do that, I just don't say anything to her. So anyways, enough about me. Eye contact is something that you develop through experience. You gotta kind of challenge yourself into getting better at it. So when I first started trying to develop my social skills, I found that I love to look at the floor. You know the main character in Your Lie in April? Yeah, bro loves the floor. I love the floor too. I couldn't fucking look up. It's just too scary. And as I realized that, I decided that if I want to, slowly work up towards having eye contact with people, waving to strangers in public, I'm going to have to stop looking at the floor first. So what I did was, the next few weeks, I would just look straight. That would be the challenge. I don't look at anyone, I just look straight. I just keep challenging myself to keep my head up. And then once that became comfortable and normal, then we start to look at people for a certain amount of time and then look away. And I know I did this absolutely autistically, but it genuinely did help me face my fears. So I would start with alright, I'm going to look at this person for 1 second. And then I'll just target lock for 1 second and try to keep my 1 second even if they look back. So I'll go 1 second, and 1 second, and then I'll pick my targets as I walked around the world. And then eventually that 1 second turned to 2, then to 3 seconds. And I think beyond 3 seconds is a little bit autistic, because 3 seconds is longer than we think. Okay, it's 1, 2, 3. And if I'm staring at them for longer than that, it's almost autistic. But I think I had to push to 5 seconds in order to become more comfortable with it. Beyond the 2-3 second mark, they already notice that you're being retarded and stare back at you. And then keeping that stare autistically until 5 seconds is what is absolutely difficult. And some people are confrontational. It's scary doing that. But in my opinion, I had to do that. If not, I wouldn't become comfortable. So I just started to do that. I became less and less scared of other dudes, and I became less and less scared of the eye contact of women. And then slowly I could squeeze out a sheepish, soft smile, it got better from there, and soon I was able to genuinely smile at people. I started to, if they would stare too long, I would wave at them. And recently I even started being able to wink at people, which honestly, what the hell am I doing? But at the same time, I could not do this a year ago. So it feels cool. Feels badass, and sometimes I get good reactions, but that's very, very rare. Most of the time, I bet people think I'm just retarded. Next, let's look at posture for power. This book suggests that when walking in a crowded area, take up as much space as you can. Of course, please don't walk around T-posing, we're not talking about that. Just inflate your chest, walk with a slight swing in your arms. Don't be afraid to, establish your presence. Get in people's way a little bit. Posture yourself in a way where you don't feel small. Don't close up under confrontation. Don't roll your shoulders forward and then just slump your head down. Let it be open. Breathe slow, relaxed and deep. And hold your composure and stillness to the best of your ability. Can you imagine if Batman sat there fidgeting, tugging at his clothes, putting his hands in his pockets? These gestures are emitting weak and low status. Don't excessively or rapidly nod your head. You don't need excessive verbal reassurance oh, I agree, yeah, oh. Don't be too restless or fidget, because these are all signs of neediness. It's a need to feel comfortable all the time. You want to get rid of that by reevaluation and consciously noting that bad habit, and then after that, taking note of it and just actively trying to catch it and stop yourself from doing it when you are amidst experiences. And we come to the end, these are all the decent guidelines someone with a very bad anxiety or lack a lot of experience can focus on. Again, in my belief, there are no absolutes in social skills. Guidelines are to help people who are incredibly inexperienced or are trying to get to the next stage in their social skill development but don't know how. Guidelines give us somewhere to put our focus in case we are fearful and anxious, and that increases our capacity to challenge our fear even more. I think our main goal is to genuinely connect with someone and feel love. Honestly, all I really care about in this world is relationships. Interpersonal relationships give meaning to everything, right? To me, that's the most important thing. So we want to take our time. We want to set long-term goals and push ourselves slowly to overcome our fears and finally start having some control over the social opportunities you have. You don't have to hate yourself for being fearful or making progress too slowly. At the end of it, we want to be connected amongst people, feel a sense of belonging amongst people. We are not lying to ourselves that, oh, I don't care what people think. I don't need other people in my life. I'm doing this for myself. As long as we don't autistically lie to ourselves like that, taking our time and making that progress in order to have more social opportunity slowly, as long as we are trying and we know exactly what we want and we don't lie to ourselves, we are already on the right path, in my opinion. And while you're on that path, you will already stumble across plenty of wonderful social opportunities. You just gotta open your eyes to it. There's no rush to become the most charismatic, most attractive, sexiest man alive with the best eye contact, the best posture, the best social skills. There's no rush in that, because who defines what that is, right? A magnetic individual doesn't necessarily mean they're the most extroverted, they're the most social and vocal, they're the most composed in social confrontation. That doesn't make someone infinitely magnetic. Trying to get better in this is just to increase our social opportunity, and we can never maximize that stat. So take your time, face your fears, and we must try not to be too urgent and too anxious in trying to get better and have more people to meet, because that's gonna lead to some level of self-sabotage, because that comes from a place of intense neediness, that comes from a place of panic and anxiousness, and then that will spill into our relationships as well. So it's okay, let's take our time, let's build our story, our lore, and navigate through this world trying to be better, because there's no such thing as the best. And if we're all seeking to be the best, then everybody will become the most social animals in the world, and it will just lack diversity, Besides charisma, some people overlook the fact that they don't lack social skills, they lack competence. The social opportunity comes to those who are more competent, more resourceful as well, though that is not an absolute at all. Maybe you are already decently social and you lack opportunity simply because you don't have any solid interests, you don't have any goals or aspirations, you don't have anything accomplished, or you don't feel proud of yourself, you don't provide any value to other people, you only do what makes you comfortable and happy in the moment. And that could be why you feel terrible as well. Look into what we need to change accordingly and just do our best. We'll find the help that we need. We just gotta actually try to look for it. Anyway, I hope you find the people that you feel like you belong the most amongst. I love you. Good luck. It's a better world. Adios.